Hi friends, welcome back to Julia and the Garden. I'm Julia. I live in Vermont in Zone 5 here in the United States. It's in the northeast of the United States, if you don't know. And it is January, and so I am mainly just planning for the garden year. And I thought I'd put together some videos on some of the plants I have grown and will grow, and just some categories of plants. So today's video, I'm going to talk about the staple crops that I like to grow here in my Vermont kitchen garden, which I like to call my potager. And this is not an exhaustive list of all the crops that I grow, but these are the ones that really, for at least several years now, I have been growing all of these crops, and these are, like, again, the staples. So I'm gonna dive in with one of my absolutely favorite things to grow, and that is garlic. Garlic is a really cool plant, and it's actually really easy to grow. So I brought one. This is a partially eaten one, and we're in January. I harvested these, I think, in July, and they're doing really well. I cured them. There's some of them that are just starting to want to sprout a little bit. I don't know if you can see there. There's a little bit of green. For the most part, they are super, they last me a while, and I'll probably process the rest so I can freeze them and save them. But I wanted to show you this because one of the cool things about garlic is you just take the cloves out of the, I'm gonna make a bit of a mess here, hang on. Right, if I'm taking the clove, like I would to cook it. Oh, see, that one's definitely sprouting. I'm gonna use that soon. And you can totally still use them when they're sprouting, by the way. It's still perfectly good to use. You just take this and pop it in, pointy side up in the ground. And garlic is unique because I plant it in the fall and then I harvest it in the summer. Usually, you could do like late spring, early summer. With the hardneck, I harvest scapes, usually in June. I cut those off. They're like the part that makes the seed of the plant. But they're these like long stems and they're delicious. So I harvest them to eat them. And then you harvest the bulbs in July, usually for us, and then let them cure for a couple weeks, just kind of lying out in a dry, darkish place with like air ventilation, just to dry them out. Yeah, so that is one of my absolute favorite crops. I grow a lot of garlic, and I do that so that I can keep planting my own seed. And it is one of the few crops that I grow enough to get us through the year. Like, I never have to buy it's been years. It's been years since I've bought garlic at the store, and I have a couple different varieties. Again, there's hardneck and there's softneck. For the hardneck, I have a German hardy white, I think is what it's called, and it's my biggest variety. It has the biggest both heads and cloves, and it is the strongest. Like, I call it a medicinal garlic. It's a very strong garlic flavor. And then I grew a couple different of like the red, purple garlics, and they've kind of gotten mixed together. So now it's kind of my own like purple mix, which is also a hardneck garlic. They're my preference. I grow probably the most of those because they're like, they're milder, but not super mild. So then the soft necks, I've tried a couple different varieties of them, and I'm still working on getting, the bulbs of soft necks are smaller anyway, but they store longer, and you can like braid them. So I'm actually trying to grow more of them, both because of the braiding and because of the storage, but they do have smaller cloves and they are milder. So I grow all of those, and I have labels out there for them. They're actually in a raised bed, just hanging out for the winter. Hopefully they've grew some roots in the fall, and then they'll be ready to pop up in the spring. So garlic is one of, if you can't tell, one of my absolute favorite crops to grow. It's super easy, like 10 out of 10 recommend. The second staple crop that I like to grow is onions. And I grow these from seeds. So you can grow them from seed or from set. If you grow from seeds, you get bigger bulbs, and you get they're less likely to bolt on you. So bolting is when they send up a stalk to flower. And for the ones I haven't had, so I've always started from seed because I've heard about people's struggles with sets, and I really enjoy growing things from seed. So I get new seeds every year for onions because they don't, onion seeds don't last as well. And it's been 3 years now that I've gotten a decent crop of onion. I think it's been 4 years is the first time I tried, and the first year didn't go super well. The second year didn't go as well either. Last year was pretty good. The year before, I actually did make it through the whole winter. I harvested them, I want to say maybe in August, and it lasted us until, I mean, through like March, April. It was amazing, amazing. They can start sprouting at some point as well. And this year I didn't grow enough to get us through. We finished them before they had a chance to even start sprouting or anything. But it was still, I mean, it got us through several months. So I love growing them. And then, so with onions, you kind of just want to know what you're going to use them for, I guess. So I like to grow ones that have good storage characteristics. I guess are good for storing. And if I'm cooking, I'm more likely to use yellow onions. And so that's what I grow. I try to look for varieties that are yellow onions that are good storage for the most part. I have grown I also want to mention with onions, it depends on where you are. So again, where we are in Vermont, we have really long days during the summer and short days during the winter. And so we grow long day varieties of onions. If you are in like the southern United States, you're going to want either short days or intermediate day onions, because as you go farther short, the days are like more equalized, right? If you're at the equator, it just stays equal. And so that's important for them. The different kinds of onions will bulb up according to day length. So that's an important distinction that you're going to want to look at. The ones that I grow are long day varieties. I've grown New York early very successfully several times. That is has been my go-to yellow onion. This year I'm trying some new ones. I'm trying amber. And I'm trying Clear Dawn, I believe. Those are the ones I got. Then I usually also grow a red onion because that is my preference if I were gonna do pickled onions, or if I'm gonna do it raw, which I don't do it as often raw. So I tend not to grow as many of the red onions, but they've done really, really well for me. And I've grown, the variety I've always grown is Rosso di Milano. And I've had a harder time finding them this year, but I did find them from one place, I think Fedco had them. A lot of places were back ordered. Those are the kinds of I'm gonna lump these in with onions, shallots. Shallots are like elevated onions. Okay, there's a bit of a lighting change because the sun's going down and I had to feed some little people. But I was talking about onions, and to go with onions, I'm also lumping in shallots because I grow them the same way. And they're basically like fancy onions, is what I like to call them. They're actually smaller than onions. They have a milder flavor. I very much enjoy them. I love onions too, but I really enjoy shallots. And so I also grow those. So I'm lumping those along with. And I was growing one variety, and I can't, honestly, it was like a long French name and I can't remember what it was. I used to get it from Fruition Seeds and they're no longer selling. So I got a couple new varieties to try this year. I think I got Matador and Innovation, I think are the two I'm trying, and they're from High Mowing Seeds, which is another great seed company I highly recommend. Okay. And I think High Mowing has, I'm not 100% sure if they have garlic because again, I haven't looked for garlic in years. But all the other things that I'm listing here, High Mowing has some great varieties. They will be linked below. All right, number 3 on the staple crops that I grow here in my Vermont kitchen garden is potatoes. So potatoes are such a great staple. I use them in stews a lot. I just roast them in the oven. I do that a lot. If I'm doing like chicken, I like to put potatoes and carrots and onions chopped up underneath the chicken, and then it cooks in the juices and it's delicious. So yeah, my family loves mashed potatoes, which I don't do quite as often because they're more work. But my family does enjoy that. And sometimes we'll do like a cottage pie, which has mashed potatoes on the top. So potatoes are great. I eat a lot more of them in winter than I do during the warmer seasons, but they're just such a great staple crop for filling you up. So I like the yellow ones the best, and I do look for ones that will store well. Some that I've tried are Sativa, I think it's called, has been really a favorite of mine. Yukon Gem, I think, is another one I've grown. And then I like to try I like to have some different color and variety. So I've been growing Adirondack Blue and Adirondack Red, which have a purplish blue inside and a pinkish inside. And it's kind of like a novelty. I don't think they store for quite as long as some of the like yellow storage varieties that I like to get. But they make really fun like colored mashed potatoes. And then if you mix like a bunch of different colors together and roast them, it's really beautiful. I also like, let's see, I've kind of dabbled, like every year I'll try something new. So I don't remember all the variety names. I tried Purple Viking last year, which I believe has white interior and like a purple pink, like purple with pink streaking almost skin, which was really cool. Red Northland, I want to say, I might be wrong, has like the white with the red. It's kind of like a classic potato salad. I really like potato salad with the skin on. Not that I make potato salad that often, but were I going to make potato salad, I like it with the red skin still on, like the thin skin. That's an earlier potato. There are like early, mid, and later season potatoes, and I should pay more attention to that, but I don't usually. I just wait until the leaves have died back and then I know that they're ready to harvest. And then I've also, last year I started growing some fingerling varieties because that's fun. Just smaller ones. I grew Magic Molly last year, which is like a purple one. I don't think I got any of those this year. I did enjoy the French fingerling, which again have like pinkish red skins with white interiors, but they're like, I mean, they're like slightly longer and they're definitely smaller. Yeah, so I think that's it I have on potatoes. I have not grown enough to get us through a whole season yet, but I've had some good years where we've gotten through quite a bit. Actually, the year, not this past winter, but last winter, we might have gotten almost through the whole winter on our potatoes, but they tend to sprout on me on the early side. And so I also don't, so one could replant the seeds of those because the potatoes are also just grown from potato pieces. You just want to make sure you have a piece with an eye. But I do know that they can struggle with disease a lot more, and I may have some disease going on with some of my plants. So I've just been, buying new seed potatoes each year. But if you were like really on a budget or something happened and I couldn't access the seed potatoes, I could save some. I actually have some like small potatoes I didn't get to that have sprouted. So we'll see if they hold. Maybe I'll try planting them. I don't know. Okay, potatoes. Next is carrots. They are a favorite in our family. I think of them as like the dessert of vegetables because they're so sweet. And especially if you like in the cooler weather, they get even sweeter. There's more sugars once they've been exposed to a frost. Now this year, and I have done this before, accidentally left some in before, like, without harvesting them when the ground is now frozen and I can't get them out. So we'll see what they're like in the spring. They may be fine. I may be able to like roast them and stuff. They're probably not as good for fresh eating. They may be a little mushy. So it depends what happens. We'll see how it goes. But I do like to grow a good number of carrots. I have my one daughter just like loves to snack on carrots. And then we use them in meals all the time. I love roasting them. It's probably my favorite thing to do. I like carrot soup. My family doesn't like carrot soup, so I don't usually make it, but maybe next year I'll make some just for me. We love to grow the purple dragon carrots. They have a purple exterior and then the insides are still orange. But my kids think it's so fun that there's a purple carrot, and honestly, so do I. And I've really been enjoying, we do grow some Danvers carrots, which are kind of the classic, what you would think of for carrots. And I have been enjoying Napoli carrots, which the ends are like a little more blunted, like they don't taper off to as much of a point at the end. And I enjoy that. I find them easier to like chop up in even pieces. So the Napoli carrots, I have grown before as well, like the Parisian carrots, which are like, they get a little baby, like they get rounder and smaller. Yeah, those are just fun. I don't tend to grow as many of those because they're not as easy to like chop up as much for a meal. And I am feeding 6 of us, so I generally need a good number of things. They are a little bit trickier than like the garlic and potatoes are really, really easy. The onions I start from seed inside early, like I'll be starting them soon in February. But the carrots like to be direct sown. And so I wait until I can sow out there. I don't have to wait until after last frost. Usually I'm planting them several weeks before our average last frost. But the trick is that they're small and they need to kind of stay in place and preferably moist until they germinate. And so I've been using a process that I learned from Petra at Fruition Seeds, which is to put down like a frost cloth or fabric on top, and then I can water through that, and then it kind of keeps them in place. That way, if you get like a heavy rain or something, which we do get here frequently, it doesn't like wash all the seeds away. It kind of helps hold them in place. So I found that to be a good tip. And I also generally don't thin them like until I'm harvesting, but they will kind of they'll push on each other under the soil a little bit. So while they may be slightly smaller than they would be if I had thinned them, I still get some really great harvests. I'll try to like pick from in between as I go to when I first start harvesting. And I've had some years where by the end of the year, I have some like gigantic carrots. So that's really fun and they're delicious. Okay, I think, this year, I don't really like white carrots. I've tried those before. There's like some really light varieties. But this year I'm gonna try a yellow one again and see if I like that, because having the colors is super fun. Okay, that was carrots. Oh, my tea is cooled down enough for me to drink it. That's exciting. Next is pumpkins. Now, pumpkins, I like to grow lots of different varieties, mostly, let's be honest, mostly because I like to use the different varieties as decoration. I think it's super fun. I think pumpkins are so cool. I also will, though, roast them and use them to eat. A majority of what I'll plant will be pie pumpkins. I have had some spotty years of harvest of pumpkins. Last year and the year before, it did not go super well. So then this past year, they went in super late. I don't think I got them into like July, and I tend to direct sow those. So that wasn't great. I generally, they do better direct sown than started. And so also they take up a lot of space because they grow pretty fast. And so I tend to direct sow them. We're going to grow more because we always do. It just sometimes we get better harvests than other times. Some of my favorite varieties. Okay, I love the pie pumpkins. Their flesh is nice and dense and not as watery, which is why it's great for pies. So the winter luxury pie is my absolute favorite. And I often also grow the New England pie pumpkin. And so what I do is I actually just I'll cut them in half, scoop out the seeds, which I often save, clean up, save, and roast to eat. And then I just roast the pumpkins till they're soft, and then I can puree them, and I usually try to drain excess water out, and then I usually freeze most of it so that I can pull it up later. So for example, I just pulled up some pureed pumpkin from my freezer so I can make pumpkin muffins, which is probably one of my favorite things to do with pumpkin. My kids all love the pumpkin muffins. I just put some pumpkin spices like cinnamon and such in there as well. They're delicious. You could also make pumpkin bread. The muffins are good, portable portions. So I like to do that, but I've made pumpkin bread in the fall for years and years. Before I had kids, I was making pumpkin bread in the fall. But pumpkin can also be used in different ways. I mean, obviously you can make pie with it, but if you make the puree, you can use it, you can make soup, which again, my family members don't, my husband and kids don't like creamy soups. They'll eat stews, things with chunks in them, but they don't like the creamy soup. So I don't usually make pumpkin soup, but you could. And you can, what I like to do is I actually will use them in stew. And for that, I don't puree them. I will save, a pumpkin, and I will just chop it into pieces like I would any kinds of squash or potato into chunks and cook them in the stew. And I have a stew I made. I don't make it as often anymore, but it's one of our favorite fall meals. It's a treat fall meal, and it's pumpkin cider stew. So I use pumpkin in it, but I also use apple cider in the broth, and it's delicious. It's just I don't make it as often because the cider has a lot of sugar in it. So, and then I also end up putting slices of apple in along with other veggies. But you put the slices of apple in at the end, and it gives a good sweetness as well. So good. So those are some of the things I like to do with pumpkin. I have also made a copycat pumpkin spice latte, which I'm pretty sure the pumpkin spice lattes you get at Starbucks and other places don't actually have pumpkin in them, but it made me feel good to make a It's kind of a syrup with the pumpkin and the spices. So I've done that before, but again, not something I do super often. There's probably other things I'm missing on all of these. You can comment below things that you like to do. As far as decorative, I love the Gerardale ones. And you can also cook all of the decorative ones as well. They're completely edible. They just might not have flesh that's quite as, it might end up being more watery when you roast it, but it's not a problem. You can just drain it more. Gerardale is like a teal color. It's like one of my favorite colors. It's so pretty, and it's got like, a lot of them are unique. It's kind of big. It's like a flattish one, and it's got lots of bumps and stuff. So that's fun. There's the Cinderella pumpkin, and I have, one of my favorites, and I'm forgetting the name. I'll put it on the screen here. The name, one of my favorites. It's like a reddish orange, like just slightly more on the red side, but still orange. It's like it looks like that perfect like Cinderella pumpkin that you could be made into a carriage. There's also like the flat white pumpkins. I like those. So I like to have like the different varieties. Howden has been a favorite for like jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. They can get quite big. And then I've tried some different varieties, but again, the last few years I haven't had great harvests. So hopefully this year goes better. I'm still going to plant some in my kitchen garden, but I might also try planting some in other locations on my property where I haven't grown pumpkins before to see if there's less pest pressure and other things going on there. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be an experiment. Last but not least, this is a little different than the others because the others were all like really good storage crops as well. Like pumpkins, again, can last. I still have some from this past year sitting in my kitchen, which I should actually deal with soon. This last one's a little different because it's not really a storage crop, and that is tomatoes. We love to eat tomatoes. So during the season, we eat a lot of them fresh. But what I'll also throughout the season, what I'll do is I will throw them in the freezer and freeze them. And then later I can make sauce. We do use a good amount of tomato sauce, and we also use some pizza sauce. I tried making my own pizza sauce this past year that came out great. I tried making a salsa that turned out really great. My oldest loves salsa. I want to try to make barbecue sauce, but basically tomatoes are like a staple crop in that they turn into a lot of these other things that are staples in my pantry. So that's great. And you could make ketchup. I haven't tried that yet either. I have grown tomatoes also to dry, like sun-dried tomatoes, but mine are oven-dried. I dry them in my oven. Maybe one day I'll have a dehydrator. I don't know. And so I grow a lot of paste tomatoes for that reason. If you're gonna have sauce, the paste tomatoes really are the best. They're just a lot less watery. There's a lot more meat to them. And I just cut out the core, and I cut off any bad parts before I throw them in the freezer. And that way, when I'm ready to make sauce, I can thaw them and do that, or something else. Usually, if I'm gonna make something like salsa, I wanna use them fresh, but there's that. And then we eat them fresh throughout the season. I like to grow cherry tomatoes. What I'll often also do is roast a big tray of tomatoes along with some onions and garlic and maybe like peppers and eggplant if I have some coming in. Olive oil and salt on it, and I will roast it in the oven, let it cool, and then I will freeze that. And that is really good start to meals. It's fantastic. So I like to do that as well. So that's why tomatoes are a really big deal to me. And these, what did I have? I had 6 crops. These 6 crops do take up quite a bit of room in my garden. They're like the 6 crops that I grow a lot of. Then of course, they're not the only things I grow. I grow a lot of things in my potager. I often grow zucchinis and cucumbers, which could have made it to the list, but I don't grow I'll have like every couple years I'll grow a bunch and make like a bunch of pickles, but usually when I make a bunch of pickles, it will last us a couple years. And they're also more of a condiment, I feel like, than a staple to me. They're just kind of fun to have on things, and we do use them in season 2. Obviously peppers, like I mentioned, and eggplants. Some years I grow corn. I've grown both sweet and popcorn. I've had better luck with the popcorn. This year I think I'm gonna try sweet corn again because my oldest asked me to. And you know, if the children ask you to grow something, it's good to try to grow it. I also grow beans. Those could turn into a staple crop for me, but I haven't grown enough to make them. So I didn't include them in this list. But I did just order a large bag of the jade bush beans. So we'll see if what we can do this year with those. There's also peas I grow, both snap and shelling peas I've grown in the past. But again, not in a high quantity. I'm just trying to think, I'm like staring at my potager, even though it's getting dark and it's winter, to remember what else I've grown. And of course in my potager, I also grow herbs and cut flowers as well. So lots of good stuff going on there. If any of that sounds good to you and you want to follow along, please subscribe. And if you like this video, click that thumbs up as well. I hope you are all healthy and well and enjoying either planning gardening, or if you are a lucky person in a warmer zone, getting outside and gardening. Until next time, friends, happy gardening.